Call to session the Gig Harbor City Council study session on Thursday, October 28th. I'd like to call to order the Gig Harbor City study session of Monday. Tuesday. Yeah, this is completely wrong. Of Tuesday, November 2nd at 1:10. Roll call from my far left. Councilmember Eversole.
Here.
Councilmember Wook.
Here.
Councilmember Odenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Denson.
Here.
Councilmember Franich.
Here.
Councilmember Himes.
Here.
And online on Zoom, we have Councilmember Markley.
I'm here.
Great. And this is Mayor Kuhn. And from staff, we have Interim City Administrator Tony Pasecki
Here.
and Finance Director Dave Rodenbach
Here.
and Interim City Clerk Josh Stecker.
Here.
Great. With that, the discussion items are our 2022 budget. With that, I will turn it over to Tony Pasecki.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. When we all turned into pumpkins at 3 o'clock last Thursday, we were in the middle of talking about the storage building for the Vector truck. In council, they asked for some additional information on that, which Daryl Lyons did send to you on Sunday. So I hope you've all had a chance to read that. I see that he is an attendee. He could be made available to answer any other questions you might have. If not, then I just ask council for direction on that building.
I'm definitely in favor of the storage building, the storage for this Vector truck. The Vector truck is $500,000. So anything we can do to keep it running in good condition, I think is important.
Daryl, if you're online, this is Councilmember Bob Himes. I had a couple questions. One of them was, did we have a dedicated storage facility for our prior Vector truck? And did it lead to its demise?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, the former Vector truck was about 5 feet shorter than this one. And it fit inside the existing shop building with about 3 feet to spare on the back end to walk through. But this one back clear into the building sticks outside the shop door and not able to close it and secure it in there.
Begs the question, can we extend the building?
That's what
I think there's some issues with that building, some engineering issues. So that's the reason that Ken and the crew had approached doing the enclosure of the lean or the carport area. I know they had looked into that, but it wasn't feasible.
And then the other thing is, what would be the effect on the life of the truck, for example? You mentioned in your email that you implied in the email that this would have a negative effect on the truck if we did not have this. What would that look like? Would it decrease the life of the truck by a year, 2 years, 5 years? What would it do?
Well, it definitely decreases the life, just like if you had your fancy sports car, you wouldn't leave it sitting outside in the sun and the rain and the snow. It's a valuable piece of equipment, and years wise, I don't know what that would be, but it follows the same philosophy that we have for our generators and so forth for the lift stations. Those that sit outside are prone to rodent damage. They decay by the sun, wind, rain, rust. It just leads to a myriad of problems with just the equipment in general.
Okay, so I'm a little confused here. This thing's outside. When it's operating, it's outside in the elements.
It is.
So if it's out there quite a bit, I'm struggling here a little bit. It's out.
Well,
It's being degraded.
This is an on-call. Look at this as an on-call vehicle. It's not something that is outside working in the elements every day, but when it's in use, and if you see the operators when they're using this, doing excavation and so forth, it gets really dirty and covered with mud, everything else. But it's not always mobile. There may be days, even weeks that it doesn't even move, that it just sits there. And being out in the elements, you know what happens, with moving parts when they sit immobile, it's harder on them than being used every day. And setting in the elements definitely is not a good way to store, keep, or maintain the vehicle.
But my last question, Daryl, is does this building have, what is this building going to have in the way of utilities, water, heat? What does it have in it?
Basically, it's just an extension of the wood shop there, the end of the wood shop, to take the tin off that side, move it out, stud in the walls, of course, and extend the roof out a little bit for the length, side it, roof it, and put a door on it. It'll be insulated, so it will maintain some heat. It'll just have, and we have to per code, if we heat the structure, it's got to be insulated by code. And I mean, that's it. It'll have a plug-in, basically, I suppose, for the block heater, but there's no need for any other utilities there other than that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't quite get what you said about the utilities. So is it heated? Is it plumbed? I didn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah, the building would be heated just to keep it from freezing. It's not like it's going to be 72 degrees and balmy or anything. It's just frost protection, and there wouldn't be any need for any other plumbing except for lights, of course. Just minor electrical and heat.
So it would need its own heating source,
Yes,
and that's included in this proposed amount?
yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I have a question. So I think you indicated you're taking one of the existing walls off the shop to extend the shop. So does that mean you're basically just pouring a slab and putting the wall back on, and then the roof in one side? Is that correct?
Yeah, other than the slab, we really don't need the slab. We can just use the existing asphalt in there. We're just trying to keep it covered, dry, and warm enough so it won't freeze. So it's really a pretty minor construction project, and most everything except for the door would be done in-house.
How did you come up with the price then of 40,000?
That Ken would have to be the one to answer that. He's the one that put the numbers together. But I think he was just going off of experience and, quotes that he got from contractor just for materials.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
So,
Go ahead.
so Daryl, you're just talking about retrofitting the existing building that's too short?
Yeah, too narrow, I guess we would say. Yes.
Oh, so this isn't a new structure?
No. This is just utilizing the existing structure, and even the existing metal that's on the end of the building. We're just going to move it out, and we'd have to buy some, more material for the roof and the back of the building. But we're trying to just utilize what we have without creating a new structure.
So is there any possibility that the price could come in less than this 40,000?
It could.
Okay. Yeah. Is there heat in that existing building, or this is just?
Yes, there is. I'm not that familiar with the heating system in that building. It may be adequate to heat this structure too, but I can't speak clearly to that.
Okay, thanks.
So this is just an extension on a building, and this $40,000 also includes permitting the city. So I think $40,000 to protect a $500,000 investment of the city and the citizens' money is a good use of funds. I think that we may not even end up heating it, so there's a large possibility this price could be reduced. But I think we need to take care of our assets, and when we extend this building, we'll be adding to another city building, which is increasing the asset value of that particular building. So I think I'm in favor of it.
Yes, I support this as well. It seems from what Mr. Winans has said that Public Works has been as frugal as possible in trying to come up with a solution that protects the equipment and enables this piece of equipment to serve its duty to the citizens in the most economical way possible. So I'm certainly supportive.
Well, that's 4, so I see direction to go ahead and put that item back into the budget.
Make it 5.
All right.
Make it 6.
Well, actually, it's now at 5. I was already counting you as 1. So let's move on. We had also talked about the maintenance van, and we had, pardon me? I'm actually on the document that we put together, the items that were removed by the mayor and city administrator.
Got it.
We hadn't finished talking about the maintenance van either. At least according to my notes. If your notes are different, let me know. It's something that was emailed and given to you a couple weeks ago. So the maintenance van, $32,000 to be split by parks, streets, water, and storm. It would be outfitted for equipment, tools, and parts to support maintenance tasks. And the discussion that we received from Ken Andrews was it would allow all of their equipment and materials that they go from job site to stay dry.
Didn't he also say that the van would be equipped with parts and the most commonly used parts?
He
So
did
it
say that,
would
yes.
keep from having to take the van back to the shop, fill up with parts. come back.
And they can do that with their current pickup trucks. That's, I think, the main reason why the mayor and I recommended not including this in the budget is we feel that the current fleets and the vehicles they have are adequate. So I'm just looking for a direction from council on that.
I'm in favor of this, but I'd like to see it come back next year, I think. If this is still something for them.
So in favor of leaving it out of the budget, but bring it back next year?
Yeah, I'd like to
as
see
a-
it back next year.
It sure sounds like a great idea, but we've already added a number of things into the budget. So if they could wait one more year for this, I'd agree with Councilmember.
And I agree with leaving it out as well.
I have consensus on that, so we shall move on.
Before we go too much further, could we get a tally? Last meeting, we added, at least about like $500,000 back in of new expenditures. Can we get a tally from Dave? Maybe what dollar amount we added back in?
I didn't readily bring it, but I've been working on the first reading and where we ended up with the general fund, ending fund balance. Let me look at what we have here because I'm tracking from this one to where we're going. We had 3.271 million and we're right around 2.6 million before this add back.
Okay, but I have my paper upstairs, but do
Well, it's
you,
about 600,000. But all the changes we made here have not been 600,000. One is a rollover for the Jerkovich Pier Advanced Mitigation that was not in here, and that was 180,000, I believe. So we have some things like that. If you need, I can get my computer and
do you have notes from our last meeting of what we added back in?
I'll have to tally them up. Yes.
Can you just tell us
have
what
them.
those were?
Sure.
Just the paper you need.
Thanks. I've got that one, thanks.
Okay, so what I've added back, and I'm really more going from memory because my notes are a mess and I'm thinking of that sheet we handed out. What we have is we've cut the HR assistant by half. We've added a detective sergeant. We've removed staffing study from police.
So, okay, and staff and study,
Okay, we've-
those amounts, that was 40?
We've added back the
The staffing study was,
F-350.
was the staffing study 40?
I put 30
Yes,
for
it
the
was.
staffing study.
Okay,
And then just what we have here, that's pretty much what I have is from just off the top of my head.
Well, you've got the 100 for the seniors.
yeah, we had
Okay,
the
we have the 100
history
for the
muse-
seniors
100 for the seniors,
We had the history museum too.
and we added 57
the history museum.
for the history museum.
But
Thank you.
remember, we also took 200 out for the fish food bank because we put 500,000 in to this year's budget through budget amendment.
Right. Okay, so the 200 out from fish, 57 from the history museum, 100 from the senior. The staffing study was out. And then, okay.
And then with the actions we just took here, we added in
40, I believe.
40 for the Vector truck storage, and we did put in 75 for the F-350 with the four-wheel drive package and the additional snowplow.
Oh, and last time we did the F-51, that was 75,000. We
That's
added
what I-
back
that's what I
in.
said, 75,000.
Yeah,
Director Rodenbach, did you say we took out, I wasn't sure I heard correctly, half of the HR assistant, or we took out half of what the ask was for the analyst and the technician?
We treated it as a mid-year hire, so we took out half of the financial impact
With
of
the
it.
understanding that the new administration would be reviewing the HR function.
okay, thank you, Dave.
We ready to move on? Okay. So I'd ask council to turn to page 97. Capital equipment outlay for parks. And there's a couple of items in this that are going to be paid for by multiple departments, multiple funds. We have the replacement spinner toy at Civic Center Park. John Deere multi-terrain mowing tractor. And I believe Kane Andrews gave you discussion and explanation for those. And then a replacement of a chipper and a new purchase, a new item, a material spreader. So is there any concern council has with those items? Do I have consensus that they stay in, or should we move on?
I'm fine with them. I just would like to comment that I think the purchase of the material spreader is a very good idea. I think that will go a long way towards efficiency.
Thank you. Any other council member have a comment?
I agree with leaving all these in.
All right, I've seen.
I agree as well.
I've seen head nods and all that, so let's move on to page 99. And for Public Works, this is a request for a new position, an associate engineer.
I'm good with that as well.
I'm good with that.
Can I have a suggestion, Tony?
Yeah.
Since council's seen this for a long time, and this was pretty much provided by staff, their own departments. If we disagree, they could say something. If we have to agree on every single page,
Got it.
we're doing the department's job for them.
Sure, understood. So in the Public Works request, there's the associate engineer, Public Works field supervisor being reclassed, maintenance tech, and a labor position. There was two positions that we did not put in the budget, and that was a second maintenance technician and a second laborer. Does council have any comments on that?
I have a clarification question on the positions in general. Currently, we have some of these posted. Are these the same ones as posted, not in addition to what we have posted?
No, these would be in addition to things that we have posted. These are,
Okay.
with these positions have not been authorized yet. Once the council puts them into the budget and adopts the budget, then we'll start recruiting for them.
Thanks.
Yes, I think the discussions we had at the last budget meeting with staff, I believe the consensus sounded like, let's get folks hired for the positions we have. Let's get these folks hired, and then we can reassess what we
Correct.
need.
That was exactly what we had suggested. All right. Council's good with that. We'll continue. On page 105, we had several items for city buildings. The Civic Center HVAC, replacing our building access and control system here. The Bogue Visitor Center, roof and HVAC, and then a electrical charging station. And recall that we had committed to the Chamber of Commerce the work on the building they rent from us. If there are no comments on that. On page 114. For street operating. We have funds for on-call transportation engineer assistance, the annual pavement maintenance and repair program, which I believe we did not do any this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. And so part of this is a carryover of the funds that we were going to spend this year. We need to update our public works standards, and so this is $30,000 to provide a consultant to help us with that, and then an on-street parking code development and implementation. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this is the proper place to talk about this, but I would like to see somewhere under our street operating, since it's not, and I don't know if it'd be a capital project or an operating, street operating, but the sidewalk section from the new duplex that's being reconstructed just past the corner of the History Museum to the Bogue viewing platform, the transitions for the driveways there, it's absolutely horrific. I mean, anybody that's in a wheelchair pushing a baby stroller, I've never seen such a bad transition going on there. So I think we're always wanting to do more sidewalks, which I'm in favor of, but this is a section of sidewalks that absolutely needs to get straightened out. It's actually a safety hazard the way it is right now. And when I was over there this summer with a friend of mine in a wheelchair, I was surprised that this many years has gone by and I've never really noticed what it was like. And I drove by there again recently, and unfortunately, I think it may be a little more involved than I first thought. But I think for safety and for convenience of disabled people, people pushing baby strollers, that no matter how involved it gets into having to remedy this problem, I think it would be an appropriate action. So I'm hoping to, and I don't know if any of the other council members are familiar with that stretch of road. I think Jenny walks quite a bit. So.
I do, and I totally agree with you on that stretch of road. It's really, it's a problem. I do wonder if this is not being covered in the ADA that's going on. We have a survey that's going on, and there has to be things. Would this not be covered under the ADA?
No,
crosswalks.
It's separate, and he's pointed this out to me. It's really bad.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, so we
totally
need to, I think you have.
We'll
full
talk to Jeff
support.
about putting together a project for that, and whether it goes in operating or capital, we'll get that figured out before the budget is approved by council.
All right, thank you.
I would just like to suggest we add a little bit of language to number 4 in regards to on-street parking code development. Could we add in there somewhere that we will consult with the Waterfront Association or collaborate with them, because they've done a lot of work in this area and most of the issues with parking are downtown.
Also okay with that?
Yeah. This is also for everywhere around town, not just downtown. Yeah.
You could
Yeah,
say
we-
like for the downtown area to consult or with the Waterfront Association.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about Gary Glenn and that group.
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing that we work with, so it's kind of already there.
They're coming to the December Planning and Building Committee meeting. We've had this discussion quite a bit. Potentially alleviate parking problem downtown.
Councilman,
More parking spaces, public and private, than we have demand. Trick is going to be, how do you reallocate, or what kind of? There are some things that may be a toughie.
Councilman Friend,
Role in that, but certainly in a support role.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that this is something that we can get to this year. This is something I brought up, 2 or 3 council retreats, and it garnered enough support, at least by the star count that we did back then, especially in light of Anthony Park getting up and running. And that is what got me thinking of side street parking. We don't have any standards, and people are double parked on those streets all the time as it is now. So I really hope this is something that we can finally get to working on this year.
you pretty much answered my question, that was the same thing that you bring up. So does this also include parking specifically just off of Harbor View on those side streets, and the possibility that people are even parking on people's private property, and that should be changed?
Yeah, well, my initial thought was about the side, having some kind of sides, parking codes for side streets, and it looks like it's kind of expanded in its definition here, which it's fine with me.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we get somewhere on it.
This is specific to on-street parking standards, codes, and regulation. We can have a discussion, as Councilmember Himes is talking about, when it comes to off-street parking and looking at opportunities of some parking lots that sit empty most of the day. But that's not what is intended here. This is specifically on-street parking. Okay. If there's nothing further, we can move on. Next section of the budget is the hotel motel tax. And we did have a long discussion with council about that. The Tourism Communications Director did make a presentation to you. So I think we've got all of the direction that we need, with the exception of the $125,000 worth of grants that have been recommended to you by the LTAC. And those will be coming back to you for final approval via a resolution once the budget has been officially established by council adopting the budget.
Tony, what page are you on?
I am now on page 140. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
I guess the only just minor change would be on page 141, because Ms. Pettit said that the ice rink perhaps would be in Uptown. I'm not sure if that change has actually been made.
Yeah, that's on those supplemental pages that we received, right?
That's something she's going to have to bring next year, because the goal is actually to rent it from, I believe, another city that's not going to do it this year. And then we would try it out. So she won't know that yet. But yeah, it would be at Uptown.
Yeah, I used to manufacture those, as a matter of fact, and rented them to Ice Capades and Disney on Ice and the studios in Hollywood. And there are places where you can just rent them.
Yeah.
For the weekend. But I mean, it's not, or a week, it's not inexpensive, but it's a pretty unique system. If anybody'd like to hear about it offline, I'd be glad to explain it. It's fun.
What would you call it? It's like a portable ice rink or something?
Portable ice rink, yeah.
Mhm.
We even rented it to some Hollywood celebrities that used them for parties, for, very, very expensive.
Okay. Nothing further, moving on page 147, Public Arts Project. Sidewalk art to be commissioned for the Harbor View Stinson Roundabout is the one capital item on page 147. So if there's nothing further, the next several chunks of the budget are simply some of our special funds for a variety of things. There's really not much in those.
If I can mention just number 3 on 151. This is what we've all talked about. I just want council to know that the goal of the visioning for Crescent Creek is pretty much, originally in this budget, the Masonic Lodge visioning was like 30 grand. And then I lowered it to 10 because I really don't want the consultants to kind of have their fingers in that. I really want council and the citizens to be the one that is really deciding this with the public. So they would show their support for 10,000 as far as lining up maybe the meetings. But this is basically to have the public, the council, to hear from the public, do monkey surveys, and figure out if they want to save the Masonic Lodge, which I think most people are supportive, but again, that's here or there. But this would be to decide on that first with the public. And I foresee PAL, the Rotary, maybe some seniors, a lot of different groups using this center, this building. And then once that is determined, then the vision for the Crescent Creek Park would be done just for the north end of the park. It wouldn't do anything with the downtown part of the part towards the creek. It would just be like the volleyball court, the BMX trail, and then the other piece of property. And then they can weigh in if the Masonic was in there or not, to include that in there. And that basically sums it up in there. And that's what I've heard from council, and that's what I support too, so.
And I was going to be including the discussion of that in the capital budget discussion when we would go through parks, streets, water, sewer, and wastewater.
Okay, sounds good.
But now council knows what you're thinking on that. My apologies. That section of the budget, just because it's part of a special revenue fund, the description of all those projects is in there. I'm going to be talking to the finance director about how we can make this budget document a little bit more efficient in the way it's presenting information, and it doesn't double or triple present information, because that can get, in my mind, that can get very confusing. So we're going to do our best to make it easier to follow. And
So Administrator Pisecki, that we're going to be coming back to this, is what you said?
as part of the discussion of the capital improvement budget, yes.
All right.
Which we are very close to getting to, by the way. Yes.
We're, I don't know if I'm in the right spot here, but number 6, the Scanozy net shed structural repairs. I appreciate having the money put in there. I know our board does. Jeff Langhelm's finally came up with the information that on whether or not volunteers could do any of this work, and it looks like they can. So hopefully maybe some of this cost will go down. But the one thing that I wanted to make sure, because I don't know if, today's election day, but it's the feeling of our board, and I relayed this to Jeff, and he seemed to agree that I wanted to make sure that if I'm not here, that the part of the problem that made the bid come in so high before was they were going to go in and pressure wash that building. And that building, the boards are in a frail condition, and it's the feeling of our board, and I think Jeff understood this, that the best idea there is to hand scrape that building, and the pressure washing could cause severe damage to the wood. So I would like to have, about 2/3 of the way down, this objective proposes to design, permit, construct minor building structure repair, siding, repaint the exterior of the building. I'd just like to have a note somewhere in there that under the repainting section, that it refers to hand scraping rather than pressure washing, and that could avoid some higher bids coming in if it does go out to bid.
So Councilman Franich, the volunteers that may do that work, they don't necessarily have to come from the foundation, do they? Can
Oh,
they
no,
come from?
no, absolutely
from
not.
anywhere.
We're hoping that we get some fishermen.
I
and-
would think that there would be a painting company somewhere in town that, if you solicit, not necessarily you, but if they were solicited to donate or to something, some kind of civic service, that might be a possibility.
Sure,
there,
that's a great idea. Hopefully, I mean, we'll see how it all, the first step was to see whether or not volunteers could do it. And according to Mr. Langham, it looks like they can. All you have to do is tarp and contain the scrapings. As long as you're not airborne, with a pressure washer, it looks good. So anyway, it's in the money. Hopefully the money will get done by volunteers and there'll be a big chunk of this money because the bid to paint the thing, the low bid was 153,000. So if we can get it done with volunteers, that would be great for.
Well, not that you're going anywhere, but I can pretty much guarantee you that should you, there's enough council people that are in favor of this, that it would continue for sure.
Thanks.
So the next about 24 pages or so are just some of our special revenue funds. This is how we account for things like REIT, impact fees, TBD is in here as well, isn't that, Dave? So yeah, this in the HBZ money, this is how we account for it in the budget, but you'll see when we get to the capital budget itself, how we're actually going to be using those funds into what projects. So I don't see a need for us to go through all of those funds. But what I would suggest is we jump into our utilities, starting with the water division, water department operating fund, and that is on page 185. What you see there is narrative objectives for water, and you see a variety of items that we will be doing through the operating budget versus the capital budget.
Oh, I have a question on the number 4, the SureGuard water tank repainting at 15,000. Is that really the price? Didn't someone bring this up before that it might be higher?
I thought Jeff said it would be more like 150, like he left off a zero.
Yeah, I think a zero got left off on that.
Okay.
That day, right?
So
Dave, you got that right, Dave?
what number did he come up with, Mr. Piasecki?
As I recall, as Councilmember Luke is saying, he thought that it was upwards of 150,000, not 15,000.
Right.
So that's 50,000 more added, just for our records.
And do we get just like a straight one color option on this, or can we,
Get fancy, maybe make it a
kind
ripple
of
or
partridge
something.
family it so it stands out and everyone who drives by says, my God, that's an ugly water tower.
We can certainly take a look at that.
We will get all the credit for that.
Or criticism. I think the green's pretty neutral.
Yeah, I think we should camouflage it as much as possible.
I think green's good.
It looked like a
I mean,
hot air balloon.
sometimes you paint these things so they melt into the background. And sometimes, depending on where they're located, think of cities that have the great big bulbing water tanks that go up 100, 150 feet. Now, sometimes they do something special with that, but I think for the most part, ours, we want to hide them.
I've seen giant smiley faces. Pretty cute. I have.
Maybe an image of the flag.
So if there's no other comments on this item, I'd like to turn to wastewater division, page 195, and I'm skipping the capital outlay that was already going to stay in the budget along with the positions that are being partially paid for by water, because we've already talked about all those things. So under wastewater narrative objections, we just have a couple of items. Council have any comments, concerns with that? Councilmember French.
Yes, thank you. And I briefly discussed this with you when the right time to bring this up after the last meeting. And I think, is this the proper place to bring it
Yes.
up? Okay, I would really like to see the council adopt what I would believe to be a more fairer assessment of, or threshold of when seniors or people on a fixed income can receive a utility tax break. Right now, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 36,000.
I haven't looked it up lately, but it's pretty low.
Yeah. And I don't think it's been adjusted for many years.
We peg off of the county. I believe the county rate for property taxes is what we tie to.
Right. Well, in light of the escalating sewer water costs, in addition to the property tax that has gone through the roof over the last 7 or 8 years, anything we can do to give our seniors a break, I think would be well worth it. I would like to see that number be around 65,000. So
That seems a little high. I'd like to see what the county uses, if that's what we've gone off of in the past.
We try to mirror ourselves off of the county's property tax program to where seniors don't have, and I don't really know it. It's graduated. I haven't worked with it much at all because personally, I haven't been involved with any person that's qualified. I think we have 2 people on it. I'm not sure. I would have to check with utility billing.
We really don't know how current the county property tax for cut is either. That may be years behind for all we know. And if we tie to it, then we're not doing our seniors any favor. And it's not just seniors, it's seniors with low income.
For sure. And then
Lower income.
what I would recommend is we're undergoing a rate study right now. I would recommend that council plug into that and get the reduction, because we're talking a total revenue plan for the utility. It's got to come from somewhere. And if we're reducing for seniors, it's somewhere else got to be picked up.
well,
Good.
And anything we pick can work. We just have to pick something and use it.
That's a good idea, because for the same reason you just said, if we're going to cut somebody, then somebody's got to pay for that. And
Correct.
it could be passed on.
As far as I know, we're right in the middle of that, and this is a perfect time to plug something like this in.
well, and I thought we were going to get to the rate study this year, but it doesn't sound like we are going to get to the rate study this year.
We're cutting it close.
Well, it's
Very
not gonna
possible.
hap-
It's not going to happen.
So I just wanted to get this, I don't know, I wanted to get it memorialized somewhere, especially if, November 2nd, I might not be here. So I think it's something that's long overdue to increase this threshold. And I don't know, where could we memorialize this?
What I would suggest is a new narrative of objectives, or objective for each of our utility departments that says something along the lines of review the low-income seniors bill discount policy, something to that effect. And we will then make sure that our consultant is including that in their analysis for the rate studies that we're doing right now.
I certainly like that idea.
Word about that as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. There you go. I heard that.
Yeah, I appreciate the council's support in getting that at least somewhere on the radar screen.
Yeah, well, we'll add that in and I'll talk to Jeff.
Yeah, I'll be looking for new causes next year.
I'm
I'll
sorry.
be looking for new causes to support next year.
Anything further from council? All right. So the next item would be capital, would be stormwater narrative of objectives on page 218.
I'm sorry, what page?
218. We just have two there, the local source control program and the stormwater management and site development manual update. And that is it. If there's nothing else from council, that is it for the operating part of the budget. On to the capital part, which starts on page 243. By the way, I did skip over parts of the all the utility budgets that were called narrative of objectives for capital, because it's exactly the same thing as what we also have in the capital part of the budget. And I've talked to the finance director about capital is in one spot, operating's in another, and we don't have it all mixed together. And if you're curious as to what I'm talking about, I'll give you an example. If you look on page I'm lost. So for example, on page 228, sorry for going backwards for a moment. I just didn't want you to feel like I'm skipping all over stuff. This says Stormwater Division Capital Narrative of Objectives 2022. All of this language is also in the capital part of the budget. That's just what we're about to start talking about. So I just skipped over this. We only need to do this once. And I'm going to suggest to the finance director that we take this out of the operating part of the budget and just keep it in the capital budget only, so you don't have it duplicated. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So on page 243, these items actually you've already seen because they're in the operating budget as well. These are just the all city buildings or the city buildings capital projects. Since we've already talked about those, I'm going to skip over them. And the real meat of the capital budget starts on page 247. And that's the one that looks like this. It's the spreadsheet that shows all of the projects that we are proposing to potentially do for the next 6 years. See, there are 8 that are proposed for next year, and then a series of projects for the outcoming years. Description of each of those projects is on the next several pages, along with a summary of what we believe the design, permitting, construction costs will be, and what funds we're using for each of the projects. Anna.
Yes, on page 246, and I guess that would eventually go on this chart as well. I would like to add something new to the narrative of goals. And I would like to add the old ferry landing trail. And it would say something like clarify established public access to the beach. And that could be done, doesn't have to be done next year, but I would love to have that on the list for the next 5 years.
Say that again, clarify what?
Clarify established public access to the beach. Clarify may not be the right word, but there's a trail. It needs some adjustments. It needs a little bit of
But
work. It needs some
establish.
signage. Sorry?
You could say
I
establish.
guess you could say established. There is a trail there, but it does need a little bit of work. There's, the trail is on public property, and then if you jut off before the net sheds, then you can get to the beach. But I think there is some question about where you jut off, and we certainly don't want to go onto public property. So that's kind of the tweak that needs to be made. And then some signage that lets people know that they can go to the beach, because that is a public beach.
But people are using that trail now.
Yeah,
I use it.
So it's now an attractive nuisance if it's unsafe.
there is a sign that says not a public trail, but essentially it is a public trail. It's just not a publicly maintained trail, is the way it was explained to me when I was on the Parks Commission. But I would like to make it a public trail, but make it safe and so that it doesn't impose on private property, because that's the only place you can get to on a sandy beach, and it's like the best view in the harbor. So I really think the public deserves to be able to access that.
I'm supportive, but it's not a simple process. So what it is, yeah, there's a sign saying that it's private and it's an established trail. If you go about 70% down, it's on city property. And then the last part is not on city property. The beach is city property, but then you're on Terra Bocha's property. So right before you turn to the little ramp that walks on the beach, you end the city's part. So you have
What we would
to,
need to do is fix that public access. And again, this isn't
Right.
for next year. I just would like it on
Yep.
the list.
I think it's good. It's not a simple process because I've already worked on this and there was no more time. But yeah,
Well, we'll put together some language for a new goal.
oh, he has his hand on it, so you can't use it.
Okay.
That's the way to have your finger on the trigger.
You know, that, I can understand council member Denson's desire to want to do that. And I know that people would love to do that. To me, that is, it is one of the most special places in Gig Harbor. And, you know, I think that the neighbors really need to be taken into consideration there. To turn, you know, I mean, do we have to turn everything into something? And before, and I guess that your request is to add it on here. I understand that doesn't mean it's moving forward at this particular point in time. So I know you're going to tell me that there'll be plenty of time for public input when it comes before the Parks Commission or wherever it goes first. But yeah, I've, you know, back when I was on the council before, Gretchen wanted to turn that into something down there. The neighbors came unglued. That idea died out. Now, over the last several years, I know there's been some Parks Commission members that have tried to relight the flame of turning that into a big public area. Yeah, as I said, I don't think that we have to turn every place into something that is going to attract people.
I think Councilman Denson just said, let's look at it. And doesn't necessarily mean we'll do it. Let's look at it, talk to the neighbors, that kind of thing. I agree with both of you. You both have good
I think
points.
you would have to go through the process. It has been on the work plan for the Parks Commission for a long time, but it's never risen because there's so much else to do. So I would just like it in the budget so that eventually we do get it. And there is a park down there. There's very limited parking, and that can be an issue. So there are definitely things to consider, like Mayor Kuhn said as well, but it's just wonderful. I used to take my kids down there when they were little to play in the sand, and it's such a special place, like Councilmember Franish said.
I do think it belongs in the narrative. So it doesn't go away. And maybe the parking will limit the availability of people that can go down there.
Or people walk to it. I go down there on the beach. I walk every time.
So, but that's because you live here, right?
Yeah.
And you live close by. And if you don't live close by, then you're going to have a car somewhere. So it might limit the number of people that would be accessing
The
that.
beach limits it. The beach is like from there to there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's going to limit it more than anything.
Yeah.
I don't,
That does not limit it. that's the problem.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a matter of limiting the people. It's what are the people doing when they're down there? If, like Councilwoman Denson suggested, there's little kids playing with sand buckets and everything, that's one thing. But as Councilman Franich and I are afraid of, if you get people down there carrying on and disturbing the neighbors and ruining their solitude, then that's a different question also. That's what they do, not how many, in my opinion.
So what I'm hearing is this is something that we want to put down in the budget to make sure we don't forget that this is something that we do want to work on, but there's a lot of issues that need to be sifted through and figured out before anything is done down there. It's not going to be as simple as changing a sign.
Right.
That's fair. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. So on pages 247 and 248, you see the list of projects in the spreadsheet that we are proposing for the next 6 years, with the first 8 being projects for next year.
Just a comment there, Tony. It says in the out years, it refers to the 2016 pros plan, and we've got a pros plan coming very shortly here for final approval. This ought to be updated to what's in the new and approved pros plan, I think.
The new pros plan will not be approved until after this budget has been adopted and published. So when we do this process next year, it will start saying the pros plan 2022. And it may make some of those out year projects shift around from what you're seeing here, but this is all based upon what we currently have as an approved plan.
Okay. Because the things like the Jewish dock float extension caught my eye right away, called, we've already seen the BIG thing once before.
Well, and that's that.
Pardon? I'm very surprised. And it's more than just money, by the way.
Understood. Councilmember. I believe it's because it's part of the current pros plan. So it will be removed if it ends up not being in the next pros plan. And there's nothing that says you can't, as a council, give us direction to remove it now. There's no description of it. The only items that you see described in the next few pages are the items that are proposed for next year.
I would suggest removing it now. I mean, you know, some of the things in here, not just the numbers, but some of the items. And again, I'll go back to the Jewish dock thing called, that's a very emotional item. Okay. And I don't think we want to stir emotions due to a budget chunk of information that's out of date. I just think that's a wrong way to proceed.
Councilmember Wimberg.
Yes, I'm just astounded that the home port is put off yet another year. And yet we're bringing on new projects. A lot of the complaints and what I hear from citizens are, we don't get projects finished. Well, we've been working on that for 8 years at a minimum. And the public overwhelmingly says what we had a flawed, but we did have a feasibility study. The council has voted again and again to push that forward. And yet we're putting it out another year. So I cannot support any budget that doesn't have that in the 2022 budget.
I support adding that into the 2022 budget for design and permitting to keep that project moving forward.
I'm supportive of that. You know, we've got that park down there. Let's finish the Ansich Park. Let's put everything in there that needs to be in there, that's supposed to be in there.
And I think we have the money, but if we don't, I'd be willing to take something else off the table.
There would be money in the fund balance to do the $110,000 worth of design.
It might
permit.
be a little bit more than that, but there'd be a placeholder anyway.
The Port of Tacoma has expressed that they've got some additional funds in their community development fund that didn't get expended, and that they might be willing to pitch in a little bit to help with that too, because they're interested in that project.
And I see Councilmember Markley has her hand up. So Councilmember.
Yes, thank you. I had a different question, but in regards to the home port, yes, I am also supportive in having that in this year's budget, at least at the minimum for design and permitting to keep that going. And I'll address my other question later when we're done with this topic.
I would suggest before we say we're going to do the whole thing in 2022, we go back to Public Works and confirm they can actually pull it off in 2022. You're talking about that certain period in the fall you got to hit. Can't be out there driving piles and stuff down there at the end of the harbor, okay? We've run into this before where this comes in chunks and you got to hit that chunk.
We're not talking about driving piles. We're talking about design and permit.
Okay, as long as we're talking design, because somewhere in here I had design, I saw it in one of the many pages describing this. Design and build were the magic words, and it caught my attention.
Yeah, this one's
I mean,
permitting.
I agree on the design part of it.
The only reason why I had suggested to wait was just because of trying to, first thing, it wasn't ever delayed, but as some people had mentioned, it was just to get something finished before we start new things. And as we've known, and that's fine with me, I just, it's hard to get everything accomplished. So I was trying to make something more reasonable and actually finish something before we started something else. Or just start to get going on the permitting and actually complete something before, because we were very good at that. We're very good at adding many things and not finishing things. And it makes it harder to finish things, so. But I think you have I think you've got the four to bring it forward.
Definitely. Councilmember Markley, your hand's back up.
Yes, thank you. This is a question, I guess for down the road. I've had some citizens ask about Shaw Park. I'm assuming that there's nothing on here because we're waiting for the village to be completed before we would really vision out Shaw Park in any way. Is that everyone's understanding, that that park is just kind of on hold until the village is built and done?
That is the concept right now. You know, obviously the shopping center was delayed. And so it made, I believe OPG has given us more land for Shaw Park.
Yes, that's
started. So yes, that's why it seemed to be on hold from previous years.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the parks capital budget? Councilmember Farnich.
Are we still on page 248?
Yep, 247, 248.
Okay. Well, my first question is, how did this Cushman Trail Phase 5 get into this 2025 plot? We had an extensive review of that whole proposal. And, you know, I don't believe this council is taken any action on this item. I know the council that was here 2 years ago, we said this is a non-starter. So can you tell me why this is in here?
Yeah, it's, this thing has, I mean, I haven't added or deleted a lot of this. This is in a plan that's been there for decades. So a lot of this. So this has been there for way before 2017. And the goal is to basically have this trail hook up to Kitsap County. And so we don't just stop it. Even, you know, this was going on way before to figure out how to go around the hospital, how to go from the hospital over, basically, instead of doing a bridge over 16, the goal, you know, this was going on with grants and had a life on its own, which was actually good. So instead of doing a bridge, a walking bridge over 16, you were going to go up to, I believe, 144th and then cross over the freeway to get down to Kitsap County. You know, up where's up past your old business, and you just keep going. So this isn't a big plan. And so, you know, we were also trying to talk about not doing a viaduct, a viaduct over Burnham at the Cushman Trail, but go up to the thing. So yeah. So this is something that is, you know, with grant money and everything, the goal is to basically, some people's goal is to take this trail 10, 20, 30, 40 miles. So, and it's not, it's past us. Our part is just to take it to Kitsap County. So this is something that's been in the plan for just I'm almost for 10, 15 years.
The preferred alternative that we came up with, 2, 3, we're having all those work study sessions over this with the consultants and is the majority of this preferred alternative was the Kennewood Boulevard, which is, that's all in Pierce County. So until, I don't know how much of this is just numbers or how much of this will actually become a working document in the future.
We'll find out closer to 2025.
So the way I envision this thing working is it is to a degree your plan for the next 6 years based upon a variety of studies, discussions, and decisions that councils, this one and past councils have made. So I'm assuming that the Cushman Trail Phase 5 was part of the pros plan. And that's part of why the Public Works Director put this in here.
Yeah, it's the pros plan issue. And by the way, $4 million won't, but that'll get you to the divider on Borgen Boulevard, but no further. Getting under or over Borgen was the trick. And there was no solution that we had. I was on the committee. The agreement was we're going to follow the power line course that already goes on the other side of Borgen all the way up to the hospital. Okay. And that land is there. It's no problem. We can do it. But getting over Borgen was the trick. And there was not a solution identified to that, except throw money at it.
And generally what councils that I've worked with do is they really concentrate on the first 2 years of the 6 years, because those are the things that are becoming real. The things that are further out are more of this is something we aspire to, that we're hoping to do, that is in some of our future, our plans that we put together for the future. But just because it's sitting here in 2025, here in 2021, doesn't mean that it's going to stay there. It may move forward, it may move back, and it may disappear altogether based upon other priorities as we march through the years. So next year, you're going to have a document when you're doing the budget that says 2023 through 2028, and then 2024 through 2029. And you'll see projects changing their priorities, changing the years that they're in. This just gives you a best guess snapshot based upon everything that we know, with everything that we've talked about and the plans that we have of what 6 years worth of parks capital projects would look like.
Could you put a footnote in this thing when you?
Yeah, we can do footnotes.
Like when you go beyond 2025, it's proceed with caution. And by the way, the 2022 pros plan will supersede this.
I think we can, as a matter of fact, what we can, it says this right up at the top. The project provided is based on the proposed 2022 budget objectives. Let's see, CIP identified in the city's 2016 pros plan. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. And we can add one more sentence there that says the 2023 through 2028 capital budget will be based upon the 2022 pros plan. We can add that language.
Good, that'll do it.
Well, and I really do appreciate this format, and I believe this was your suggestion to do this. So it is a very useful thing, but part of the problem with having, it was just like the Jurisdiction Park discussion we had, is people start seeing these things, the community starts seeing these things on some sort of formal document, and you start building expectations by having them here. And then, so having a true and accurate, I guess, once the pros plan gets done next year, that'll really have an impact on how.
And I
this
think
looks.
adding that sentence, as Councilmember Himes suggested, and maybe have even in bold. So when people look at this, they say, okay, well, this is based on a 6-year-old document. There's going to be a new one coming out that will reimagine what we have here.
Yes, totally. I'm in favor of that sentence and bolded.
Yes.
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 Okay. Councilmember Markley brought up a good point about Shaw Park. So thank you, Councilmember Markley. I've had a number of people talk to me about that park as well, and they've got some really great ideas. So I know we don't have time to do it next year or maybe even the year after, but is that something that we should add to the narrative of goals as well, to have a placeholder and just put Shaw Park visioning and master plan, and then just put the 2022 through 2027?
So wouldn't that be in the pros plan?
Yes, it would be in the pros plan. I would suggest that we wait till next year
Okay,
to add anything in the mentions Shaw Park, because it's not in the pros plan right now, or else it would be in here.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
I would also suggest that when council does that next year with the mayor, they reach out to OPG. So if OPG is going to give us some of that land, we could probably do amendment to the development agreement that lets them give it to us sooner, or lets us develop it sooner. So if it ends up taking 3 years to have them do the shopping center, maybe we amend that so that we can actually develop that park sooner.
I would think they'd probably want something in exchange for that, but it's certainly a good idea.
Other than our unending gratitude,
Well,
I can be irreverent now and then. So if there's nothing else for this, I propose not going over each project and its description and its funding levels. If you have a question about anything that's in here, please let me know. Otherwise, I suggest we move on to the next capital budget, which is streets.
Page.
Page 255.
I have one thing.
Sure.
I think the mayor mentioned it on page 251. Still under the Massagic Lawn Lodge building improvements, we have stuff there for a consultant still. Didn't the mayor suggest that it should be grassroots, public?
Yeah, you're talking about page 250, the Masonic Lodge building visioning.
Yeah,
Yes, I think the mayor had discussed that and his reasons for putting 10,000 in.
Oh, think I see what you're saying. It says 50, doesn't it?
Well, that's for Crescent Creek Master Plan on page 251.
251 at the top says Masonic Lodge building.
Yeah.
Well, that's the last 4 words of the sentence that begins on the previous page.
I see. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it says staff, with the support of a consultant, will conduct a public visioning and develop a master plan for the Crescent Creek
Okay,
Park
gotcha.
in accordance with the 6-year CIP pending council direction on the city's proposed Masonic Lodge building improvements, which are what you'll be looking at in the item just before that for 10,000. If there's nothing further, the street division 6-year capital improvement program is on page 255. And 256 and 257.
Item SB 11.
Yes.
Watchet Drive, Wagner Way. I know what it is. But to be quite honest, that wasn't even on our radar screen for the past few years. If you go back to the tip, it is down the list quite a ways. Okay. And basically, how did it get into 2022? That's the question.
I'll be honest, I am not sure
Say that
why.
again? I'm sorry.
It was way down, that particular project was way down on the tip list. And somehow it's managed to sneak its way into 2022.
Which one?
SD 11.
On page
Watchet Drive,
256.
Wagner Way, intersection improvements.
so that's not the 16.
No.
No.
That is Wagner Way, and
This is the guy trying to make a left-hand turn.
Yep.
Off
out
of Wagner
Way
Yep,
onto Hunt,
yep.
onto Willachet.
Yes.
Okay, during the rush hour.
yes.
We had to, when we realized that we had to turn in things to the Fed for our grants, they had to basically be site ready. This was one of the items that we turned in for grant money. It was one of the 3 items that we turned in. So I believe that,
That hasn't been designed the last couple of years.
yes, it has. It's actually, this Wagner, there was going to be a light there. This has been designed, this actually has been put on the back burner. Some developers have actually paid into this fund. And across from Mallard's Landing, there's another development going on right now. So, and when we had Stinson closed, this was a major problem right there. This is where everyone cut through too. So this intersection is important, and we had to turn in a project for federal grants, and that was site ready. And this was one of those ones.
And
That's
this
why
was
it's
one of
here.
our earmark
Yep.
requests.
This is an earmark.
So if this one comes in, we'll get to build it, but if it doesn't, then we don't do it.
Yep.
So we're grant driven versus utilization, or let's say utility driven here.
A grant,
Grant comes in, we throw
council
out the tip list and we say,
council
ah,
supported these items that we put in for the Fed.
yeah, this, I got a problem with this, Carl. We spend all this time running through level of service models and all kinds of stuff to say, here is a list, a prioritized list of what we need to do in terms of transportation. And then the first time a grant opportunity comes flying in, we say, oh, well, we'll change that around. We'll just pull this other one right in there and away we go.
Grant, okay.
And this competes with the resources from Public Works. Then we all say, why are we behind schedule? I didn't know
Council,
this thing was
council
being worked on.
okayed these projects to go for federal grants. They okay them.
I never saw, I don't, boy, no, I don't remember this one. This one would have caught my eye right away. Okay, I don't know about you. It hasn't been in Public Works. I know that committee at all. And I've never seen it before.
I do remember seeing this, and I do remember the conversation and that it was shovel ready.
Yep.
I understand Councilman Hyam's point, but I think that this is a project that eventually needs to be done anyway. So if there's money available now, in my opinion, we should go for it, even if it means pushing something else aside, instead of doing it later at additional cost than at our totally our own cost.
So I'll just give you two comments on this concept. One, sometimes, and I hate to say, but sometimes when there's a specific grant available for a project that you have that is not near the top of your priority list, and it would pay for a big chunk of the project, councils have reprioritized and gone for that. Second, not to burst your bubble, but I think it's probably highly unlikely we're going to get the federal money for this anyway, based upon what we heard from Mr. Learn yesterday.
Oh, no.
So I mean, we're going to be lucky to get enough money for one project, and this is not our top priority that we submitted to our delegation in Washington, DC. So we're having a big discussion about this. I get a feeling it's going to be moot.
Well, then can we have a footnote here on this that it says it's grant dependent?
It says so in the write-up. On page 262, it says item 23. The expense or the funding summary, federal grant, $900,000. Without the grant, nothing happens. I mean, the grant is 2/3 of the budget for this project. If it was 1/3 of the budget, then we might talk about finding money to take care of it if the grant doesn't come through, because the grant is 2/3.
This is design and construction.
Yep.
We're rich in money and we're short in manpower in Public Works. And here we go. We're using a criteria that's based on money. But right now, heads are worth us more
it's
than money.
Better than the other way around. Most cities have it the other way around.
That's the reality. We've had money sitting there.
Yeah.
In fact, we keep carrying over money from year to year, but projects don't get done, okay? Because we don't have well, we got shifting priorities, number one, and number two, we don't have the ability to contain what we've got.
I think this 2022 budget, we're adding to Public Works, so we're adding bodies to that. So it makes sense that we might add project to it.
We did add one additional engineer position as part of the budget for 2022. You added a few others for this year, and I think we finally got them all but one filled. So we're getting to the point manpower wise that we now feel like we can put staff resources toward getting these projects done. If we lose a few people, then obviously we're going to be behind the 8 ball again.
Is there any way we can make this a turnkey project? And if it's already designed, it's ready to go, right?
It still is it's still something that we're passing on to someone else to do.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying,
There-
make a
there is-
turnkey call, hey.
There is still some design and permitting money in the
Rich,
budget for
let's
this
just
project.
Contract with somebody and say, hey, let's just do it. Okay, the city involvement will be slim to none, okay, and go from there. And that answers the issue where we got money, we don't have heads, we don't have the capability. By the way, we're still trying to catch up with that extra head on what we didn't do last year and the year before that.
There's still pretty
But
much
we don't
every
have the money
project.
for this. This is a grant thing, and we just heard Tony say the chances of getting this money are not good.
I think it'll work its way out, and there is no project that's not dependent on some staff time. I think it'll work its way out.
Yeah.
Council's still gonna have to okay anything, so I think we could move on.
Councilmember Freilich.
We'll give it a whirl. Okay, we'll give it a whirl.
Can you refresh my memory on what segment phase 2 of 38th is?
2 is probably from
56 to-
TCC to Patterson, what is that? Well, that's,
Six.
yeah.
Say that again?
So it's the big portion. It's across the street from Patterson's all the way to TCC or Hunt.
Yeah.
That's phase 2.
And,
It's huge.
well,
It's like a 10, $15 million, what does it say?
well, it just says 800,000 in 2022 and 2.8 next year.
Yeah,
so,
it's a big deal.
Are we on the right one, phase? 56th Street and Hunt.
Yeah, that's what
Yes,
we're
that's what
talking
we're
about.
talking about.
Okay. Already on the tip list that we've talked about
Mhm.
quite a bit. Yeah, the 800,000, I assume, just covers design.
Yes,
So is this the one, this is a federal grant one too, isn't it?
yes.
And this is the one that we think we might have a chance to get done?
I think this one is a better chance than the previous one, but not by much.
Oh, okay.
But it looks like regardless of the federal grant, we're going to be doing design and permitting next year. We're just hoping the grant will pay for construction the following year. Is that
Yeah, that-
correct?
Correct.
Right?
Well, no, actually, the federal grant pays for $500,000 worth of the design and permitting.
Oh, okay.
So is both sides of 38th in the city?
We own 2, that was a mistake that was done a long time ago, is when the city should have bought to the center line. And they did that all the way to the schools too. The city bought the whole thing or the city accepted from the county all the way to the shoulder, which meant it's a complete responsibility of ours.
Oh,
And they
shoot.
should have done it to the center of the line. So it's all us.
So both sides are
Yep.
city.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Sidewalk's
that.
only on one side.
What?
Can we give it back?
I thought it was just one side.
Yeah, my goal, and I think most past council is you never do both sides of a sidewalk until you get the whole city with at least one side.
I think Fed requires sidewalk both sides. They did on Harbor Hill. When we were gonna get when the city was gonna get Fed money for Harbor Hill extension, that's when they decided to put in 2 sidewalks.
Well,
So I think the feds required sidewalks either side.
Okay, the 38th phase 1 is only
That'll
one
blow
side.
this up.
So that's,
We only got space for.
So
in the budget.
is there any chance of following Councilmember Abersal's suggestion?
what, you
Give it
can't
back.
just, what, give it back?
Give it back.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Here, Pierce
don't-
County, you can take this mess.
Here, give it back. And by the way, I need $10 million.
I love that idea.
So
No,
if you,
I don't know, I'm just,
I'll buy you dinner if you figure that out.
We'll give you Mr. Dammeyer's direct phone number. You can give him a call.
Yeah. I'm glad your glass is half full.
It was definitely worth asking.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
On
You're
page
sure you want to ask it, right?
2, it's not really a question, it's a request. page 260, under what's labeled 18, the mid-block rapid flash beacon crosswalk, where it references the beacon system on 50th Street. This is where the Peninsula Retirement Community is, and they've been asking for this crosswalk for like, I don't know, at least 3 years, and it's probably been a lot longer than that. I thought it was, sorry, 260. It was in the budget last year. It may have been in the budget before that, and I thought it was done, but it, so I know Jeff's got all the designs and plans for that. Is it possible that we can add some language that that is completed by like the end of the second quarter? Because I think we really owe it to those folks, especially now that Met Market's open, like they want to be able to safely cross the street and walk to shopping and walk to their dentists and.
Is this to go to the park
Yeah,
from?
it goes right to Veterans Park. And then they've got
from
their
across the
great
street.
grandkids come in, they want to cross the street. It's been in the plans forever, but can
Yeah,
we just
isn't
get
it,
it done?
where is it on 260?
It's on
Item number
mid-block rapid
18.
flash beacon crosswalk system.
So what more clarity are you looking for? Because I think it's in the plans to do next year.
Is it in the chart? I didn't even look for it in the
It's
chart.
number 8. I think it's already in the,
Oh, it's on the next page.
SD6.
it's one of those things that we didn't get to, and I think it's in the plan to do.
But I would like, if we could just add some language by the end of second quarter, something like that. So it just gives us a little bit more oomph to get it done.
From a,
And again, that's where I suggest the CIP quarterly reports that council likes. That's where you follow that.
Right.
So it's up to the next year. It's up to council next year to follow that.
But can we put it in here that we want it done by second quarter?
I don't want to do that unless Jeff says it's
Yeah.
possible. That's my only concern about that, is I think we should not do that on our own without talking to Mr.
I
Langham.
would agree. You're deciding on the budget, but they're directing their daily plan should at least involve them.
No, I agree.
You
I just
know.
like to emphasize that we'd like,
But we
really
can-
like to get
we-
it done.
We can explain our desire to have it done,
That sounds
our
good.
strong desire to have it.
And I think it's in his plan and he's showed me drawings. It's just a matter of manpower, I think.
Photocopy the other ones.
So can you, since SD6 is referring to that, can you put the street name on that?
That would be
50th Street.
helpful.
oh, right on the spreadsheet document.
On the spreadsheet.
Yeah, we can add that.
That would be helpful.
Good idea. Thank you.
We would just say at 50th Street Court in Soundview Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Does that paragraph there in 18, does that include more than the one on 50th? It does call out 50th. But yeah, there's another one along Soundview Drive near Hunt Street. So I don't want to,
I think it's just for the one location.
That's what they cost, 50 grand. So there's only one.
okay.
So I have one, since this is kind of skipping around this whole budget, but I'm trying to transfer one to-do list to another while I'm doing this. And one of them says, reach out to Public Works for a porta potty at Randall Boat Ramp. And I'm not going to get to it this year. So it's really important. This was a citizen request that the boat ramp, everyone comes off the boat ramp on Randall Drive, really having to go to the bathroom, and they find alternatives.
That's council, that's county.
It's the county. So the goal would be to reach out to the county, just have our city reach out to the county and request a porta potty put there. So could we put in a narrative of Public Works to reach out to the county?
That would be in the operating budget somewhere, not in the capital.
It probably doesn't go in the budget.
It would be in the what?
If council wants to put it somewhere, it would go in as an objective in the operating budget for streets.
Operated budget of streets?
But that doesn't cost anything. Does it really need to go on the budget? Can it just be a memo from the city administrator to?
It's one of those things not to forget about. That's my point, is I've had it on here for 3 months and I'm probably not going to get to it in the next 2 months. So it would be for the,
And it sounds like a nice task to give to the new parks manager. When
Right.
that person comes on board.
Oh, boy.
okay, I'll put it on my next page.
This?
Anything else for the street capital budget? Councilmember French.
So I don't remember talking about, ouch, what the Hunt and Scansy intersection improvements are. That I would have thought would have been done with any intersection improvements that needed to be done there. I would have thought would have been part of the Scansy Court project.
And I cannot answer that question. I'm assuming this is on your 6-year or on your, yeah, your tip.
That's a really confusing
And it is,
intersection.
and occasionally when you're doing, when a developer comes in and says, I'm going to do this development and your standards say, fine, you have to do, for example, a signal at this intersection, but you're only creating half of the reason to do the signal. But the city is going to be doing the signal in 2 years. You have them pay an in lieu fee, and then the city takes care of the project later. I don't know if that's what's going on with this one.
Well, I mean, they've just went through major reconstruction there last spring of corridor from Willachet down to Hunt. So I guess I can get some
Yeah,
clarity on
that I think we have to ask Jeff about.
And also, well, I'll get clarity, I guess, maybe at the Public Works Committee. I mean, I also got some questions about how this Hunt and 38th Avenue intersection improvements have gotten into 2023's budget when, you know, there are so many, you know, from the metering of the round. I mean, there's have been so many road projects that have slipped over the last 2 years. And it seems like just some of these ones that have risen up to this 2023 timeframe, I don't think have been very, at least they haven't come through our committee yet.
Right.
One thing we might mention is we've been in a crisis for 2 years. It's just so there has to be some, everyone's life has been a little bit unreal. So obviously you're going to slip a little bit when you're closed for 17 months.
Well, right,
and you're,
and I didn't mean that to be just casting blame or disparaging anything. I'm just saying that, you know, in light of that there are plenty of other intersections around Gay Harbor that have I believe, a bigger problem than that one does. And to see that one rise up to the 2023 timeframe is just have some questions about it.
okay. The one also, just so you know, the one on Hunt and Scansy, we did do some changes about 1.5 years ago that probably made a third of the accidents there now there's a turn lane that's there now. And there wasn't a turn lane 1.5 years ago. Yep. And so people would pull out, not realizing that the person was going straight. And there were a lot of accidents. So we've made a designated turn lane from Hunt on to Scansy, and it's made a huge difference. So those are just big things that they did
I've
within the
made a
last
note
year and
of
a
these
half.
2 projects. I'll ask Jeff to put together a short email that you can send to council and explain how these projects or why these projects are in 2023. Man, it's hard to say. Rather than a little further out or moved up. There's nothing else on streets. We can move to wastewater. On page 226 or 266.
Once again, I'm sorry. Can you tell me? the page?
266.
Is there any carryover money from 2021 that's going to lift station 12?
I believe so. That's the WW3, the Station 12 improvements.
I'm assuming there is, because this is just projected money that's gonna need to be spent in 2022, and anything that happened in this year is not reflected.
Right,
here.
and the description simply says lift station 12 construction will be nearing completion at the end of 2021. There will be carryover costs at the beginning of 2022. So even though most of the work will be done, a little bit will have to be done in January, and the final bills will be paid then, and that's why this appropriation is that large. Any other questions on wastewater? Seeing none. Move on to water. Page 273. We have 5 water projects proposed for next year. Questions? Not, we are on our last budget, which is page 279, stormwater. Are there any questions or comments?
Well, I'll save my questions and comments for a later date. I still haven't got a complete picture on how that Burnham Drive culvert replacement went from 800,000 to 2.6 million. So that will be a question I'll have to get answered and not take up the rest of the council's time.
We can ask, I'll ask Jeff to get with you.
I think we'd all want to know that.
Yeah,
So when you
well,
get that answer,
I'll ask Jeff to put together something to get to the whole council.
Well, I'm assuming SW3 has to do with the culvert under Harborview Drive.
I believe so.
And, I don't, I know that the Supreme Court came down with this ruling and what have you, but I think we definitely need to look into alternatives to, or if there are any alternative approaches that can be taken there, because and I think we need some input from the commercial fishermen that have operated that the hatchery there for many years, as to how big of a problem actually is that culvert for fish passage. And because these.
And you're still talking about the Burnham Drive culvert?
No, now I'm talking about SW3 down at
Donkey
Creek.
Got it.
It's a big problem. It's a long culvert.
Well,
what I hear from the experts on that particular culvert is that won't do one single thing to improve the salmon habitat. Salmon are not having an issue now, but what I do see is, because that came down from the feds, it's a way for the city to get federal money to help with the culvert. But don't be fooled in saying that it has something to do with improving the salmon habitat.
I'd like to do some research. Who said that it wouldn't improve salmon habitat? I think we need to know this, if it's not going to improve salmon habitat.
I think she's asking you a question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about this not improving the habitat, salmon habitat. Who, you said that there were experts who said it would not. Who, can you
Yeah,
tell me who
the
I
people
can?
that run that hatchery down there, particularly Tom Lauerbich, that is taking the lead on that, whose father, I believe, started it. George Lauerbich started it over 40 years ago when there were no salmon in that creek, none.
Okay, the fishermen think that there is no,
Right.
okay, good.
Councilmember Rodenberg's absolutely correct on that assumption. And, it might be helpful if we get the Fishermen's Club here to give a little bit of history.
It's interesting you say that because I'm arranging now for Councilwoman Denson to have a meeting with them. Might as well make it a larger meeting.
Pardon me, I didn't catch the last part.
Might as well make it a larger meeting and include all council with the Fishermen's Club because it's not.
Makes more sense.
Yeah, I don't think council is hearing the true story.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that too, because actually I hear from Public Works that if you daylight that, you do make it much better for the fish than having a really long culvert.
I think instead of debating it here, let's get the fishermen in and maybe let's hear from Department of
Experts,
Fish and
like the Fish and Wildlife
the people
Department.
that were with Kilmer that day. I
Yeah.
don't know who that was. So get everybody in the same room and we can find out what the real situation is.
So the,
Yep.
the description of this project, remember, it's $35,000 for design and public outreach, is determine options and associated costs for the daylighting of Donkey Creek at Harbor View and Austin Street to improve fish passage. The conceptual design process shall engage community stakeholders to ensure the continued operation of the Gig Harbor Fishermen's Remote Site Incubator System and support efforts to enhance the RSI's post-restoration. This project will serve as a tool to acquire future grants for further design and construction. So all this project is right now is trying to figure out what it is, what the options are, and bringing everyone together who has input to share and something at stake. So definitely the Fishermen's Club will be part of that.
Yep.
And I think Councilmember Markley has a question too.
Well, this may be my last chance to have a comment on this, so I just want to make sure that some of the alternative to the Department of Ecology people that are the so-called experts, when I would put a lot more faith in the people that have actually been running that site for 30 years. So anyway, that's enough of
If we
that.
can find time on one of our last 3 council meetings to have them the fishermen come and make a presentation.
I think that particular meeting might get contentious. So I would suggest it would be a work session instead of a full-on council meeting.
Okay, I'll.
Yeah, I
consult
think
with
it's
Mayor.
good to have the state there, the Fish and Wildlife Department there too.
Well,
Everybody.
Councilmember Markley.
Yes, thank you. So my question was regarding the funding that I think Congressman Kilmer is still working on for culverts. Do we have an update on that? I don't remember talking about it yesterday with Dale. If the funding that Congressman Kilmer is working on for our local culverts, is that included in this infrastructure package that we now don't know if it's going to pass or not?
I believe it is. I can call the congressman's office and see what they can tell me.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered if anyone had an update on that as far as.
From the staffer who was with him when he was here a couple months ago, and I think Councilmember Denson, Councilmember Wook, and
Yes, I was there, I think, with Andrea.
after card, she'll know exactly what it is I'm asking about. So I'll give her a call and then I'll send out an email update.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because that would be, if we can get that funding, that would be awesome, especially towards the Burnham Drive replacement that had such a higher price tag on it. But yeah, thank you.
Anything else? Because if you don't have any other questions, we're done reviewing the budget. That was the last item.
But I don't have any more questions about this, other than maybe some things that will come up at the council meeting. But would it be appropriate to just hear briefly what the information that you have from your meeting with our lobbyist?
Yeah, we actually asked the
I was gonna say,
lobbyists.
Councilmember Denson, would you like to comment on that? I can,
Well, I
chime
don't
in.
have my notes, but I'll try and remember and you guys can, my other council members can pitch in. It definitely did not sound super optimistic about our federal funding, but they said, we're going to learn a lot about what kind of projects that the feds are looking for. So we'll be in a better position next year to apply perhaps for different projects if we kind of hit the wall with that.
right. So essentially, the House and the Senate chose different ways of dealing with earmarks this year. In the House, they actually put together a process where each member was given a certain number of earmarks that they could request. And I think that magic number was 10. And our representative chose to only put one governmental project into his list of 10. The rest were for nonprofits and tribes. So nothing on that side. As far as the Senate goes, what they have done is they've put together, I think he said $6 billion, maybe up to $8 billion worth of money that goes into a fund that then the senators can make requests for earmarks into. And it kind of felt like it's a black box sort of thing where they would make requests and boom, out would pop. What some mysterious committee would decide ends up getting on the list of things that are getting federal funding. So we were just told to sit tight, be ready to provide additional information if we need to. Our projects are in, and they're still in the mix with the Senate, but they are not in the House.
So was this information relayed to you in a Intergovernmental Affairs Committee meeting?
Yes, you could watch that.
Yeah, I
Yes,
can.
yeah, you
So-
can. Yeah, and Dale Learn and I had a conversation a few days earlier about the same thing. So, and he didn't provide any information above and beyond what he provided to the committee yesterday to me when I spoke with him.
Are you aware of any place that a person could go to find out what these 10 projects that I'm assuming Mr. Kilmer?
I will ask Mr. Learn if he has that list and he can share that with us.
Thank you.
One thing we wanted, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say this is not about that. So if you want to.
Yeah, one thing we wanted is because of the change of elected officials, we wanted our lobbyists to be able to come and talk to all of us, because, so we asked them to come to when they have their legislative, I think it's November, I think it's the 8th or the 16th, actually, to have the lobbyists come and, present. They have I forget what they have. They have some motion or their agreement or something, so that not all of us are going to be here next year. So we wanted our lobbyists to be able to come and speak to council.
So they are scheduled for their contract renewals on the December 13th meeting. And if you'd like them to be present at that meeting, I will ask them to do so.
Yeah, we asked them at that intergovernment meeting we had, and they said that was fine.
I thought we asked them to be here for the review and council approval of the legislative agenda.
Which is
Yes.
next
Is
week.
that the same one?
Oh, okay, we're talking about
Yep.
two different things. And yes, the legislative agenda is up for approval next Monday.
Yep, and they said they'd
That's
be
when
there.
we asked them to be.
Yep. So they'll be there.
But you'll have our state lobbyists here. Mr. Learn, I don't think would be back.
Yeah, there is one more thing in the budget. I think we all received a letter, if not an in-person presentation, by Mr. McMillan of the boat shop saying that they were short. Their project went over budget about $32,000.
Right, we did.
And they sent us an itemized list of where they would like to have that money. I'd like to see that $32,000 put back into the parks
That would
and
be, I think, yeah.
earmarked for the boat shop.
yeah, we'll figure out where that goes.
Pardon me?
I said, we'll figure out what part of the budget that goes into.
Okay, but we have consensus that we'll put it in there?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Do we have consensus to do that?
Yes, I'm in favor of that.
Yes.
Yes, favor.
I thought it was in there. I thought the mayor had supported that.
I told them that I supported that and that I would be asking council for that.
Oh,
So we
okay.
had said that at the last one.
So
I-
just wanting to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did ask, I would like to have, though, I also asked John if he would provide any record that they've put any money in, because I actually don't think they've done a lot of hours, which is great, 400 hours. But I asked if they put any money in themselves from their own fund. And I don't think they have, because they showed the city in the grant. So I also asked, how much do you have in reserve? If you're not putting any money in, how much do you have in your own fund? because that would be good to know, if they have a couple $100,000 or 150, it's good to know that, I think, if we're giving money. And so I haven't got that answer.
The city owns that property, right?
Yes, they do. The other question I had is when we put in 297, 297, I saw where ours wasn't 297 when they showed on that piece of paper. It was slightly less. And that less amount might be that 32,000. I don't know why it was less. It was like 260.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that was, because we all had approved
Because of
297.
the port grant.
Yeah, but I thought council passed the 297. So
Well, we did, but they only needed they only upfront needed the 262 because they had the other funding. So my point was going to be that I think that 31,000 is accounted for already, really, because
Yeah.
we appropriated the 297
Yeah.
in this year's budget. So,
Yeah. So will you check that, Dave, maybe? Because I think that.
Yeah, we might be able to just go ahead.
We
and
We've
can
already-
just- we can just send them a check then.
put it in the
Great.
2022 budget.
Yeah, I would still like to know, how much they have in their own fund, but yeah.
We'll look at that. Okay. If there's nothing else, Your Honor, do we do motions to adjourn at study sessions?
It's
Um,
only 3:00.
I know. Okay, so here, so I've talked to, this is something different before we adjourn, but I've talked to different council members, and they're somewhat supportive of this. We have a very rough outline of a lease with the boat shop for the red brick house. And that's where the boat shop gets 50% use of the brick house and the city gets 50% use of the house. And that's for events. This is the little red brick house.
Isn't there already a lease for that?
That's what I said. It's a very broad lease that's all it says. It says that the boat shop gets 50%, the city gets 50% use, and then they both rent them out. And they can see each other's schedule. And then all that has to get figured out, who does weekends, who gets what days, stuff like that. That's never been figured out because it hasn't been open yet. And it won't yet because there's not parking. So this probably won't get open until the roundabout gets finished. I was thinking that if someone walked by the building, for part of the city's 50% use, if people physically could actually walk in there, if we had volunteers to staff it. So the boat shop wouldn't actually have to staff it at all, or it wouldn't happen. And it wouldn't be all the time of the city's 50%. It would not be at all of the boat shop's 50%. It would be maybe 20% or so of the city's 50%. It would make it so that if someone walked by the building, they could physically walk in, get a cup of coffee, learn a little information about the city. We could also even have some things about the History Museum, to go to the History Museum to learn more. And they could see a short film and hear a little bit about, we have all of our archives right now are in the wastewater treatment plant basement. And I've had a lot of the public very upset that over and over to me that the archives of the city are behind locked gates at the treatment plant. And they used to actually be here at City Hall. So I just wanted to know if council at all had any support in letting that building be a little bit open to the public once in a while without having necessarily rent it for a wedding or an event. It would also give more awareness to the boat shop. But again, it would not be taken away from there. It would only work if there were volunteers, and just like to, see what council thinks about this.
For myself, I would like, since you just brought it up and hasn't been fleshed out to me, I'd like to see what the boat shop has to say with that and make sure that it complied with the existing lease.
Okay, we
I
have
agree
talked
with
to the boat shop.
Sternberg. I think we should just sit down with them and because I think I'm
Done
happy to
that.
explore some of these ideas and see how it would work. And again, volunteers sometimes are hard to
Yeah.
get, but if we can get them, then
Okay, just so you know, we did do that a year ago, sit down with the boat shop, and they weren't against it at all. They were concerned about the volunteers who, that as long as they didn't
Due respect, Mayor, you asked us to approve something, but I don't believe we sat down with the boat shop. You may have sat down with the boat shop.
That's correct.
So
We
I'd
sat down.
I'd like to hear from them myself.
Sure. I
And-
thought you had said that I just wanted to let you know that we had talked to them and you had replied that maybe we haven't. So just clarifying that.
I would be supportive of that. I would be supportive of that proposal, because I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, it's a long walk to get down to the Scansy House, okay, as the only other open one on the waterfront down there, okay? So I think it'd be great to open up that facility to weekday or weekend or whatever, to take full advantage of it. I mean, we sunk money into the thing. We might as well get utilization out of it, okay? And I think that would say, open it up.
Okay, so if there's no objection, we will adjourn. Thanks.
Aye.